there. I can see people from the Netherlands, from India, from Switzerland, Copenhagen, super cool. Great, and we'll have more and more people. San Francisco, Chile, excellent. Yeah, it's the Western Hemisphere call, so we should have North and South America and Europe and Africa available. And it must be very late for the person calling in from India. So thanks everybody for joining us. So I'm going to start by asking, we've got a poll that's, my friend Louise, who is running the tech for this call, is going to put a poll up on the screen. And I'd love to, we're going to have a couple of polls pop up during the call, but I would ask you to identify if you are already involved in a fossil-free type local campaign in your community. So if you've already been working with 350.org or with another organization, partner organizations trying to get your community to go fossil-free in some way. So you can just answer yes or no to that. I'll just give you a few minutes and we'll see who we've got on the call. Cool. So wonderful to see all of the responses coming in, people from all over the world. And I think Louise is going to close that poll. Once a few people have answered, we can see, just click yes or no on your screen. And once that's complete, we'll see who's already, who we've got on the call. 56% newbies, very cool. So yeah, I'd like to welcome, it sounds like we're about half and half, people who've already been involved in campaigns, 19 people so far who've already been involved in fossil-free campaigns where they live, which is great. And then a special welcome as well to those people, 24 people have responded saying that they're not yet involved locally. This call is all about welcoming you to the fossil-free campaign and encouraging you to get involved as we move into the next phase, because I think from the three panelists that we're going to hear from in the next hour, we're really trying to encourage and support local action as a key strategy in addressing the climate crisis. So I really want to welcome you, whether you're really experienced and have been doing this for years, or whether this is your first time considering whether you'd like to lead a local campaign. Everyone who's joining, you're actually the first people in the whole world to hear about the next phase of the fossil-free campaign. This is a bit of a sneak peek before we launch the global campaign more widely during March and the following months in 2018. So we really value your questions and your comments throughout the call. Just use the Q&A button. So yeah, in the call today, I'm going to introduce what is the fossil-free campaign, what is this next phase about, what's new about it, and then we're going to hear from local organizers in 3 different parts of the world who I think can really demonstrate the sort of campaigns that we're hoping to encourage in the next phase of the global fossil-free campaign. So I'll allow our panelists to introduce themselves. Emil, if you could share where you're from and what campaign you're working on, that would be wonderful.
Yeah, of course. Thank you for having me. So my name is Emil. I'm a student in Wageningen in the Netherlands, and I'm part of the small group of students who grouped together to form a fossil-free Wageningen. And we're mainly concerned with our university. So we're one of the student groups.
Great, thanks for being on the call. And Prince Papa, I'll ask you to introduce yourself and your work.
Thank you, Anna. Thank you, everybody, for joining this call. My name is Prince Papa. I work with 350.org as the Sub-Saharan Field Organizer. And currently, I'm based in Nairobi, Kenya. Thank you.
Wonderful, thanks. And Nicole in Brazil, if you could introduce yourself.
Hello, everyone. It's very nice to see people from all over the world. I'm a Latin America team leader, and I'm based in Curitiba in the south of Brazil.
Wonderful, cool. And I will be having the opportunity to interview Emil and Papa and Nicoli about some of the key local projects that they've been working on throughout the call. And you will all have the opportunity to interview them as well through the Q&A. And you can see, you can also read along in the chat. My friend Louise is typing as 350.org. And if you've got any questions in the chat, she'll help to answer them via the chat as well. So before we get into hearing about the local campaigns, I will just introduce what is the Fossil Free campaign. The Fossil Free campaign is all about local action. So we know from pushing on our national governments to change, and we know from the international climate negotiations that the pace of progress is achingly slow at the national level and at the international level. We're seeing progress, but we know, because we're aware of climate science and we're seeing climate impacts accelerating around us every day, we know that the problem is more urgent than the national and international agreements are making out. However, we're very inspired by the actions of local people in their communities. We're seeing around us, and we'll hear 3 examples of this throughout the call, that local action is making change. It's causing shifts in cities and in communities and in towns at a much faster rate than we're able to see at the national and international level. So that's what Fossil Free is about. It's about local communities taking action together, coming together and trying to encourage their local towns and their local institutions to commit to 3 demands. And those 3 demands are, first of all, a fast and just transition to 100% renewable energy. Second, no new fossil fuel projects anywhere. So that includes stopping any proposed fossil fuel projects that are proposed in your community. And secondly, also banning future fossil fuel projects from being proposed in your community. And finally, the 3rd demand is not a penny more for dirty energy. So this includes campaigns to get your universities to divest, to get your pension funds of your local municipal governments to divest. Includes campaigns to cut financial ties and sponsorships with the fossil fuel industry. And it includes campaigns to get banks to stop investing in large fossil fuel projects. So if you're working on, or if you would like to work on a local campaign that hits on any one of these 3 demands, that tries to make the actors in your local community commit to one of these demands, we will work with you and support you to make that happen. And then when you win, not if you win, because we know that that through really strong organizing, we're able to achieve wins, and we'll hear more about that on the rest of the call. When you win on any one of these demands, we'll support you to then encourage your local targets to engage in the other 2 demands as well. And we're going to keep going until all over the world, hundreds of cities become thousands of cities who have committed to these 3 demands. Now, a lot of people have asked the question about, 350 has been working on fossil free for a long time, pushing for divestment. That's been called the Fossil Free campaign in the past. And they've been asking the question, why does 350 feel that now is the time for the campaign to evolve and to expand into these new demands and new audiences as well? And I think one of the key answers on that is that we've seen success in divestment. It's very rapidly spread into a global movement. It has shifted trillions of dollars out of the fossil fuel industry. It's become a mainstream concept. It's gradually taking away the social license of the fossil fuel industry, and yet it's not enough. More people are needed. So we're starting to shift into expanding so that it's not only a focus on divestment, but also on fighting the fossil fuel industry and on showing a popular demand for renewable energy instead of fossil fuels. So it's both a push and a pull strategy. We're going to be fighting the fossil fuel industry wherever they propose action. We're going to be pulling out the money and their social license with divestment campaigns. And we're going to be pulling the rug out from under them by supporting the growth of the renewable energy industry until we achieve 100% renewable energy. So I'm going to ask, I think the second poll is going to come up shortly. We have this question around local action. We know from observing campaigns around the world that local action can get the goods. So we want to ask you the question, do you feel like it's the correct focus to be focusing on lots of local campaigns working together to make a change at a global level? Do you feel like that is a strong strategy that you believe in? And the second question is, on a scale of 1 to 10, how confident do you feel identifying a local target to run a fossil-free campaign in your area? So 1 being not very confident at all, or 10 being totally confident you already have a local target in mind. So I'll just give a few minutes for people to respond to that question. And if anybody has any clarifying questions that they'd like to ask, you can use the Q&A. You can use the Q&A function at the bottom of the screen as well. So once Louise closes the poll, I'll just give a couple of extra seconds for the last responses to come in. And then once we close the poll, we'll look at the results. All right, there are the results. I think everybody can see them on their screen. So out of the 46 people who responded on the call, do you feel like the focus on lots of local campaigns working together can make a change at a global level? 100% of you think that yes, that's true. So I think this is a strategy that's resonating people. It's that whole idea of thinking globally and acting locally. And then this is I think a really interesting question. Question 2, how confident do you feel identifying a local target? And we've got a very even spread. A bunch of people are saying, yeah, I've got a really good idea of what I would work on, but a bunch of people are saying, I have no idea at all. I would need a lot of support. And so that's the sort of support that we'd like to offer to you as part of the Fossil Free campaign. We have tools and resources available to you to help brainstorm the sorts of targets that you might choose to campaign on, the sorts of campaigns that we think are effective, and it can help you to identify the sorts of targets that you might like to work on in your local area. And Charles Merrill is asking a question saying, I feel confident about the target, but implementation could be difficult. And I think that this is actually a great segue. We could go into speaking with each of our panelists. The work of organizing and running campaigns is indeed really difficult. Changing the world, stopping climate change is not easy. It's not something that can be achieved just by signing a petition and clicking like on Facebook. It requires a lot of really hard real world organizing, but that is the sort of thing that does and can change the future. So we're going to flick on over now to the first of our panelists, and we'll hear a little bit about what Emil has been working on in the Netherlands to attempt to address this issue in his local community. So Emil, could you introduce a little bit about your campaign?
Sure. So we're a small group of students. I think we're usually with around 8 people, and we run a divestment campaign at our university. Now, the usual divestment campaigns really look at how these institutes can divest their money, but in the Netherlands, universities cannot by law invest in anything. So it's a different kind of divestment campaign, and we have more indirect targets within our university. So we have 3 main focus points. The first being the banks that the university uses. The university does their finances with 2 banks that both invest heavily into fossil fuel industries. They're also connected to a pension fund, which invests heavily. And the third way is, of course, the research that's being done at the university and the curriculum that is sometimes influenced by fossil fuel industries. So that's mainly what we're focused on in Wageningen.
Awesome. And can you tell me, or tell everybody on the call, not just me, let's talk a little bit about how many people are there in your group, and how do you work together sort of each month to try and pressure the university in these 3 different ways?
Right. Well, our group usually consists of between 6 to 10 people. We're a university group, so there's lots of students, and it's off and on. Of course, people have different schedules and different things that they have to focus on, and so people are coming and going. But usually around 6 to 10 people, and we organize weekly meetings, which I think is essential to the success of our group, at least. Where we see each other, talk about fun things, but also talk about the campaigns and talk about ideas of what we can target. And one of our campaigns that I would like to talk about more here is the one that we had last year about the banks. So as I said, we have 3 focuses: the banks, pension funds, and the research. And we focused on the banks first. So we tried to get a campaign going where we asked the university to switch to a sustainable bank. And this campaign really took off. We started with a petition where we asked all students, all alumni, all faculty members and professors to help us out and sign this petition and put pressure on the university board to switch to a sustainable bank. We got 1,000 signatures, which is quite a lot for our university of 10,000 students. So that was quite impressive, I think, or at least for us, it was a great success. We handed over the petition, and that went well. But unfortunately, we haven't really received a formal response from the university yet. So there's still lots of progress to be made on that aspect.
Mm-hmm. And as with any strong organizing campaign, when you make one step, like organizing a really strong petition, 1,000 out of 10,000 students is really a lot. So congratulations. But when your goals aren't achieved immediately, you'll continue applying pressure until the goals are achieved. So I wanted to ask, I've seen this really great photo on Facebook from your campaign about one of the protests that was run regarding the activities of the fossil fuel industry in your area. So can you tell us a little bit about this beautiful image and what
of course.
your campaign hoped to achieve with this?
So we're also, besides running our own campaigns, we're also sort of a focal point in our community of our university and our city for people who are interested in climate change and activism. And a couple of weeks back, we heard that Shell was going to come to our campus, and they were going to run a sort of marketing campaign on our campus. They would set up a yellow igloo that you can see in the picture here, and they would invite hundreds of primary school students, kids, to come and visit them and see and hear about their stories about technology, about the future, to think about world problems, food shortages, droughts, and such. And we thought Shell is not the right company to do this, of course. They're part of the problem. So we got together with our group and some other people, we mobilized them, and we thought we need to do something against it. So this is a protest that we organized. We wanted to expose the real Shell. We wanted to show everyone what Shell really does. And that is mostly causing trouble in the world, such as oil spills. So this is what we put in front of their Bright Ideas Hub. We showed them that they're responsible for oil spills and that they should be held accountable for this, and that we should not believe their lies. So this was a protest of a few weeks back, and it was very successful. Yeah.
Great. And when you say that this protest was successful, you probably didn't achieve, changing Shell's idea about whether they should be, drilling for oil in the deep sea drilling or stopping their activities in Nigeria, for example. But what did you achieve? Why do you think it was a successful activity?
Well, I think one of the main goals, apart from these campaigns that we run with our student group, is also to engage students with fossil-free ideas and to spread these ideas. So one of the main things that we also do is raise awareness. And such a protest is a great way to engage students. We had, I think, 30 to 40 people there who participated in this protest. And then dozens, hundreds walked past, and we handed out flyers and we spread our message. And this way we influence a lot of people on campus. So I think in that respect, it was great. We made the news, we made the local news, we made the university paper. So that's one way of us spreading our message and informing people about these things.
That's great. Thank you. I've got a couple more questions that I'd love to ask you, but I'm going to come back after we've gone through some of the presentations from all the panelists. But I do want to congratulate and say that, you know, activities like that and activities like pulling together these mass petitions, they do really make a huge difference to your local community, and people can see that any small activity that the fossil fuel industry does is going to be resisted by citizens wherever they are in the world. And so if we have campaigns like yours happening at every university around the world, I think that that's when the fossil fuel industry will really know that their expansion has, that the end of the expansion of fossil fuels is going to become inevitable. So yeah, well done. That's great. Before we go on to hear from Papa, I wanted to answer one of the questions that's come up in the Q&A. And this one's from Stephanie Francis. And she asks, what if there aren't any fossil-free groups or 350.org local groups in your local area? How can you help? Are there other ways to help? Where do you begin? Can anyone start a campaign? And the answer to this question is yes, anyone can start a campaign wherever you are. And the first activity that we want to offer to people as part of Fossil Free is the opportunity just to host a gathering. And we're trying to encourage people to get this started during March and April. There'll be different timelines for this in different parts of the world, depending on the existing campaign calendar. But the first ask is simply to host a gathering. We have a gathering guide that we've put together, and it just guides you how to go through. If you get 10 people together in your lounge room who you think might be interested to work with you to run a campaign, then what's sort of an agenda that you can go through that takes 60 minutes or 90 minutes that can motivate people to understand how they might run a local campaign. So this is your first assignment: host a fossil-free gathering from March 10 onward, and you can register your gathering, and you can download the event guide at fossilfree.org/gatherings. As we mentioned before, this is a bit of a sneak preview of the campaign. These resources are only available in English at the moment. Different regions of the world are still working on translations or so on. So your local 350.org might be pushing this out more towards the end of March rather than the start of March. But you can already check out fossilfree.org/gatherings to see how you can get started. Yeah, great. And then, okay, I'm gonna move on to talk with Papa. I hope that answered your question, Stephanie. There are also going to be ways for people to get involved if you feel like there is no local group near you, or you're not able to invest energy in starting a local group. I do encourage you to try starting a local group, but if you feel like that's not possible, we will try to have volunteer opportunities for people to support remotely as well, for those sorts of people who might be able to give just 2 hours a week or 4 hours a week, something like that. But the real core of the campaign is to run local campaigns. So we're trying to encourage as many people as possible to get involved in starting and running a local campaign. I'll hand over to Papa now. So Papa, if you'd be able to share a little bit about the campaigns you're working on and the sorts of change that's creating in sub-Saharan Africa, that would be wonderful.
Thank you so much, Anna, for this opportunity. And First of all, I would like to apologize for my dark image there. It's pretty late this side. So 350 Africa, mainly in the Sub-Sahara, we are focusing in 4 major countries. That is South Africa, where we're really targeting all the new coal mining as well as the predominant old ones. And in Kenya, the government has proposed a coal power plant in a UNESCO World Heritage Site called Lamu. In Ghana, the government also proposed a coal power plant in an area called Ekumfi and Somenya. But right now, there is a win in Ghana in which the team managed really to scale down and work with an opposition which had a renewable energy manifesto. And in Nigeria, the team is focusing on anti-oil in the region. And for this particular presentation, I will be focusing mostly on a renewable energy campaign in Ghana.
Great. So can you tell me a little bit about, about the renewable energy campaign in Ghana, how that got started, how many people were involved when it got off the ground, and what sort of success they've been able to achieve?
Yeah, so in 2013, 350.org organized a global power shift in Turkey. And 3 persons came from Ghana, 2 gentlemen and a lady. And from there, with the training that the gentlemen had, they decided to carry it on and see what it could bring. And the same year, when they returned back, the government had proposed that they wanted to increase the energy mix in the country. That with the training that was conducted in Turkey, this was really measuring on tackling the fossil fuel industry. And the team say, let's form a volunteer 350 group and see with the help that we're gonna have from the 350 guys, if we can really tackle this. So we liaised with the 3 teams, and they formed a local group called Ghana Reducing Our Carbon, in short, GROC. And through GROC, we did mapping. We gave them training in campaigning, digital partnerships, and networking, and also resources, online resources, organizing resources on various ways in which they could target the government and the Volta River Authority that was supposed to be putting up this coal power plant. So we also identified the community. One is Ekumfi, in which we entered into the community through the use of local leaders. And in Ghana is one of the African countries where traditional leaders really has a lot of say, even compared to the government, that once you buy their trust, once you win their trust, then if they can buy into your agenda, you're really gonna achieve a lot of what you planned for. So we talked with these traditional leaders and sold our agenda of all the impacts that coal was gonna bring to the community. And with them listening to us and them asking us, so now we don't, like in the community, 90% rely on the use of kerosene oil lamp and no power at night. So they said, what kind of alternatives you have? And that was really a training that we give the 350 Ghana in answering or tackling the sides of opponents when they tell us that you are not going to bring us power. What do you want us to achieve?
Great. So I'm hearing that all of the organizing and the shifts and the changes that you've started to achieve in Ghana were really begun 5 years ago now in 2013, when a group of 3 people attended a training and they got started on running and organizing a local campaign. Do you think that that's right? It all began from these 3 people having attended a training and coming back and engaging with the network?
Yeah, that's very right, Anna. And from the leadership of these 3 people, right now the team has a core team of 10, and all of them are volunteers. And once people find the passion in the team, then they have some reason to stay. Meanwhile, there are people coming in, joining up and out. But we are right now in contact with the really 10 dedicated people to steer the renewable energy campaign in the country.
Cool. That's remarkable. And the reason that I asked that question is just to give everybody a sense who's listening on the call, just to give everybody a sense of the small numbers of people who can really create change by working together and strategizing well if you're supported and have received training in strong campaign strategy. I know that I've been working on climate change personally for more than 12 years, but the first 2 or 3 years I did a lot of talking about the problem and I didn't really know how to organize on it to achieve change. But when I received my organizing training, I started to become much more effective, not just talking about, hey, there's a problem, we need to do something, but actually being able to lead and organize my community to achieve changes. So that's wonderful to hear, Papa. Could I ask a little bit about what do you think are the biggest challenges for the GROC team next in Ghana? The biggest challenges coming next, and what do you think the biggest opportunities are for your campaign in Ghana?
So far, the GROC team really started working on an anti-coal campaign and with the proposed coal power plant. And with the coming of the new government, they realigned their campaign with an opposition, which had a renewable energy agenda in their manifesto. So after realigning with the opposition and opposition really winning the government through the use of renewable agenda, right now the main challenge of the GROC team is trying to put the government on its toes, that whatever you promise the people, you have to deliver it. And the government said, with us, we're not going to have any agenda in Ghana where we're going to rely on fossil fuels. Now you have to bring resources into the communities that you promise this to have it. And this is a challenge in a sense that most countries, for example, in Africa where I work, most governments have really great energy policies, but when it comes to implementing these policies, that's a nightmare. And this is now, we are not so much sure how the government's gonna react to this, but this is now the campaign that we're gonna focus on the next 2 or 3 years. And the government manifesto says that by 2020, that's the next 2 years, they're gonna increase the energy mix by at least 20% of what we currently have now in Ghana. The best opportunity is that in Morocco, the COP that was held in Morocco, Ghana committed to a CVF forum in which at least 40 African countries committed to going 100% renewable. So we also have another lobby area in which we're gonna hold the government accountable that you are a signatory to a CVF forum and you must commit to this. Thank you, Anna.
Wonderful. Thank you for sharing your really inspiring story. I think it's just one great example of the sorts of really transformative results that you can get from starting with local organizing. So that's great. I want to address one of the questions that has come in via the chat. And I'm also going to, I'll encourage, I think, Papa, there's one question in the chat for you as well that you could answer by text. You can write a response in there. So yeah, one of the questions that's come in the chat is about when there was a recent announcement by New York that they were going to be divesting from fossil fuels in the city's investment portfolio. And the question is, why did we not urge the city to go all the way to include, stopping all fracking infrastructure and companies from, I think the question is, why did they not urge the city to go all the way to include all fracking infrastructure and companies from these as well? So yeah, fracking and why, and there was also a similar question that was asked to Emil earlier, is, do you feel like it was strategic to focus on divestment in your university first? And how do you feel about including demands that the university, for example, source its energy from 100% renewable energy? And I think the main answer to these sorts of questions is because sometimes in campaigning, in order to build a movement, we need to celebrate partial wins, right? Yes, getting New York to divest from fossil fuels was a thrilling victory. Many hundreds of millions of dollars moved out of the fossil fuel industry. And in addition, the city has brought a lawsuit against Exxon and Chevron, some of the largest fossil fuel companies on the planet, for causing climate change and the damages that climate change is causing to the municipality of New York. So celebrating that is a very important win, but that's certainly not all. And so part of committing to be a local organizer over a long term involves, when you create one win in your town, what can you do to move to the next level? We've actually had some successes at various universities in Europe, in Australia, I'm aware of, where there's a community that has successfully got their university to divest from fossil fuels. And then the next stage is saying, okay, if you've divested from fossil fuels, how can we then push the university to go further and actually be installing renewable energy installations, solar panels on the roof of all of the university buildings, for example. So that's why we have these three elements of the fossil-free campaign, so that we're not only when we complete our campaign and we say, okay, we've won on divestment, that's not the end of the campaign. We're needing to keep going and to keep expanding until we achieve these three demands: 100% renewable energy, stop all new fossil fuels, and divest, cut all financial ties with the fossil fuel industry, until we achieve those three wins everywhere. In other places, like what Papa is talking about, the first commitment might be 100% renewable energy, and then we'll expand from there to include looking at investment portfolios. So you can start at any place that might be the most appropriate point for you, but then our campaign team can support you to consider how you might shift your strategy over time. At this point, I will move on to Nicoli. So this is a great example of a place, Peruibe, who's recently achieved a huge win. And it has been around resisting a thermoelectric power plant, a specific piece of fossil fuel infrastructure in the city. So Nicoli, if you could tell us a little bit about that campaign, that would be wonderful.
Thank you, Anna. And thank you everyone who's watching. I want to first say that I really believe in local power, and we have been doing a great deal of work in Latin America to ban fossil fuels. And the industry is big and organized, but we are acting locally. And one example is we banned already 350 and fracking in municipalities in Brazil, and one state. So we are building local power and fighting it from the ground. So great that you also want to get involved, or whoever is involved, great that you're doing it on the ground. In Peruibe is a city on the coast of São Paulo. It's a beautiful place. It's in the middle of the Atlantic forest. It has indigenous lands. It's a touristic area. So everyone who lives in São Paulo once in a while goes to Peruibe to spend their beach vacation. And it's interesting, Peruibe, because 30 years ago, they already, with local power and people power, they banned nuclear power plant just from organizing. So it's a city that has already this history. Of course, the people who organized 30 years ago are not the same. But Gas Trading, which is a foreign company with a subsidiary in Brazil, had plans to build 1,800 megawatt power plant, gas power plant in Peruibe. Just for you to, whoever doesn't have an idea about megawatts, this is amongst the 50 largest power plants in the world and 10 largest power plants in Latin America. So it's pretty big, and it was going to have huge impacts. It was going to be built on top of indigenous land and pollute and contaminate this beautiful sanctuary of nature. So what happened was, throughout lots of months, lots of fights, we managed to ban it. And now Gas Trading cannot build this power plant there anymore. Of course, the challenge continues because they want to build a power plant on the city neighbor to it, but the local group is already organizing with the city next to it to also prohibit it. So it's a huge victory. We are very happy about it.
Great, cool, thank you. I'm going to ask the same question that I asked to Emil and to Papa. How many people have been involved in this campaign, and what would you say is the core team of people? How did they get started, and how did they build to a win?
Okay, this is a great picture of the city hall, and it's so full of people on the day of the voting that there was not space for everybody to sit. And of course, citizens were all involved. We made a huge call, but the team was quite small. It was just, there were local groups. So local groups, unfortunately, some of them were organized around political parties, and some of them were just environmental groups. So there was some kind of clash between them. And we as 350 came in, and we were a group of 3 people. And we came in and gave trainings and made sure that everybody had a focus and were united around the same goal, which was to ban the power plant. And it's super important in times of, corruption in Brazil. It's so strong that it's important to keep a focus and not get lost in the political party debate, because of course the work we do is political, but not this left versus right or evil versus good that doesn't go anywhere. So that's a big learning for us, was to how can we glue all of these movements together towards the same goal.
That's great. Thank you for sharing. And there's a question that's been asked from Rukia in the chat. And what are the challenges that you experienced in your campaign?
Okay, I think the main challenge I want to talk about, we faced lots of challenges, but I want to tell all of you that challenges will always be there. And there's some discussion in the chat, developed versus undeveloped economies, it's easier, it's not. There's challenges everywhere. The challenges vary, they're different, but it's using smartness and focus, you can overcome them easily or overcome them. For Peruibe, the biggest challenge was corruption. Gas trading offered some money to some. So basically, how it worked, the campaign is informing the community, building power within the group, and then bringing the issue to local councilmen and women, and then presenting a law project to ban it legally from the city. So basically that's how the process was. And what happened was, during the process, gas trading started injecting money into some, like the commercial association. Okay, imagine it's a touristic city. Everybody depends on commerce, restaurants, stores, hotels. Everybody's kind of connected to this association. So the head of the association started threatening and punishing everybody who put a sticker saying power plant no on their window. And the councilmen, on the one day of the voting, they locked themselves into their office to not vote because they were too scared of gas trading and what the repercussions would be. So we had how we managed to make sure the voting happened and that the councilman made the decision to approve it was we put the whole city into the city hall, and they were all screaming, and we had banners and materials, and we inflated a 10-meter balloon that we usually use on actions. We inflated this in front of the city hall, and we made a huge noise around it. And, the councilman got really scared of losing votes in the next election. So they voted for it. And now it's not possible anymore for gas trading to go there.
Great. Thank you. Wow. And I think this is a wonderful example of how you've not only succeeded in stopping one piece of thermoelectric infrastructure, but the demands were expanded to actually ban all future gas trading and like mega polluting projects from the city, so that you don't have to fight that battle against another piece of infrastructure again. You've actually got a clear policy that says that it's banned in future as well. I'm going to take a couple of questions from the Q&A. I've also seen a question in the chat. Will we be able to get a recording of the presentation? Yes, you will. We'll send out, hopefully, if the recording is working, you will be able to get a recording of this to watch again afterwards. But there are two questions in the chat that are related to each other. One is from Marion Spielhagen, who asks, is there any possibility to bring all of the fossil-free groups quickly together when something special like Mr. Trump leaving the Paris Agreement happens, or for huge global demonstrations? And there's also a related question from Joop Karskens, which is about, hey, there's an IMF study that says that fossil fuel subsidies amount to $5.3 trillion a year. Shouldn't we address this? And you might not think these two questions are related at first, but I believe that they are. If we are working across thousands of cities around the world, building local power and building the sorts of constituencies as Nicoli and Papa and Emil were describing, then when we bring all of those engaged people together, we can achieve really big change on a big level. There is planned to be a global demonstration already, where we're sort of putting our eyes ahead about 6 months' time to early September. It's around the Global Climate Action Summit, which is going to take place in California in September. It's a space at which lots of mayors are getting together, and like subnational governments, municipalities. The leaders of those governments are getting together to talk about local climate action from a government side, and we want to be responding at the same time all across the world to show that people are taking local action across the world as well. And that's just one opportunity. There will be multiple opportunities for all of these local constituencies that we've built to come together and express our voice. And I think to Joop's question, sorry, my Dutch pronunciation is terrible. It's very difficult for us to, there have been people working on shifting fossil fuel subsidies for many decades. And one of the reasons that it is so difficult to shift is because the public movement on climate change is not yet powerful enough to shift the International Monetary Fund. And it's very difficult to shift an organization like that, a global organization with just, 3 or 10 people, as we've been speaking about in these local organizing examples, where this core group comes together and starts organizing in their community. To shift the IMF, we need a huge global movement coming together all at once. And so how do we build a global movement? It's through building local organizing so that we can then express these sort of continent-wide and multi-continent demands to finally shift these large institutions. And so Fossil Free is not the only project that you're going to see 350.org doing in the next few years. In Canada, 350 will also be focusing specifically on the tar sands campaign. In Europe, there's a very strong focus on no-tap, the transatlantic pipeline. And these are the sorts of campaigns that require sort of national coordination, very large email lists of tens of thousands of people. But we're going to succeed in those campaigns by having a strong relationship with the local level organizing that's happening all around the world. So thank you very much for those two questions, and I hope that my response there has been an effective answer for you. Before we wrap up the call, I'm going to ask each of our 3 speakers to try to respond in 30 seconds, maybe 30 seconds to a minute maximum, so we don't run out of time on the call. But I want to ask the question, what is the best part of being a local organizer and working to win local campaigns? What's the best part for you personally? What's the most rewarding for you? So who would like to go first?
Yeah, I'll jump in. Thank you, Anna. Sorry, Nicole. Being a local organizer, I do enjoy the benefits of having a local knowledge and being able to understand what my community really needs, and being able to campaign on the grounds where you are known. Sometimes when campaigning globally, you might have these issues like, okay, for example, I don't understand the politics in Turkey, or if you are in Brazil, and if you are from another country apart from Brazil and you want to campaign in Brazil, you must have some people to guide you. But being a local organizer, you know your country very well, or you know your local area very well, and you know the people who hold the power that can help support your agenda. Thank you.
Cool. Nicole.
Yeah, for me, it's the possibility of facing this big industry that is so organized, so powerful, so rich, with little resources and little people, and winning them and beating them and showing that we will not step back and we're not afraid and we actually have a lot of power. So that, for me, that's what's the greatest part.
Wonderful. And Emil?
Well, for me, it would have to be the people that we meet in these campaigns, the people that we do these actions with. In Wageningen, we're a student town, so we have a great network of local student groups focusing on sustainability. And it's great to see people that have a passion for something to come together and create something bigger. We have a large national network, and we're also active in with the European 350 network. So it's great to see that all these people that want to do something can do this when they come together and meet other people, and ideas spread and bloom into something beautiful.
That's wonderful. Thank you very much for sharing that. And I'll add for myself, when I'm working on a local campaign, I find the most rewarding thing to, again, be the people that I meet and connect with, and to know that I'm not alone as somebody who's very desperately concerned about this issue, but to connect with other people who share that same concern and who want to work together. And also, yeah, I think the satisfaction of applying your local knowledge and your local expertise, as Papa was saying, and actually winning is an incredibly satisfying feeling. And if you're a well-trained organizer, I think that persisting and winning is inevitable. There will always be setbacks. There'll always be failures on the road to winning. But if you can see each failure as an opportunity to learn and to perfect your organizing talents, then eventually you will get to a win, and you'll experience that feeling of power and influence as an individual, which is so empowering and rewarding. So Louise has brought up on the screen a poll, a fossil-free gathering, and this is a question that I'd ask to everybody on the call to please respond to. Would you like support to help run a fossil-free gathering in your area on or around or after March 10th? So March 10th is the first time that we'll be putting fossil-free out there into the world. But as I said, in some regions, it'll take a little bit of extra time. This is sort of a preview for people who are ready to get started early. So please have a respond to that poll, and we'll see the report come up shortly. And yeah, this is, again, I'll just mention that website, gofossilfree.org/gatherings is where you can receive your event guide for how you might choose to get started in your local area. We're actually, as we speak, the website gofossilfree.org is being updated with new resources, trainings, online skill ups, all of that sort of stuff, so that we can provide more and more support to local groups that are getting started over the coming year. We're going to send you a follow-up email after this webinar that has links to those resources, as well as a place that you can register your first fossil-free gathering. And sorry, just checking my notes. The events are going to include, we're going to share a short film that you can show at your events, and we've also got a sort of discussion guide to help you go through for that first gathering, so that you get to the point of identifying if there is enough energy in your local area to commit to going through and doing a strong campaign plan, and identifying a local target. So I think that pretty much wraps up the presentation for this hour. I'll invite everybody to stay in touch with 350.org, register on Go Fossil Free. We'll be providing more and more information as time goes on. And yeah, before we go, Louise has one more poll. And this is useful information for us as campaign organizers too. So based on what you know so far, which of the 3 fossil-free demands do you think you could apply locally to a campaign in your area. None, more than one, or all three demands. And maybe, Louise, you could bring up the demands on the screen as well so that people can see what they are. So 100% renewable energy, no new fossil fuel projects, and not a penny more for fossil fuels. Oh, and there you go. That's the second part of the poll, which is which ones do you think are most relevant in your area? Cool. So I'll give a little bit of time for people to respond on that. Cool. And I think one of the last questions that was asked in the chat is if the notes from the chat are going to be recorded as well, and the notes from the questions and answers. I can't promise that every single detail from the chats and the Q&A is going to be recorded because there was a lot in there. But before we leave the call, we might try to just record some of those answers so that we can send out notes to attendees. I can't promise too much detail in there, but if you're very interested in keeping some of the links from the chat, I'd encourage you to just select the whole chat and copy and paste it into your own text document so that you can watch all of the links after the webinar closes. I know that Nicole, you put in a great video from the local campaign. So thanks very much for sharing all of that. And thank you everybody for attending. Regardless of wherever you are in the world, I hope that you'll want to engage in the fossil-free campaign. A huge thanks to our three panelists. Thank you very much, Emil, for joining. Thank you, Papa. And thank you, Nicole, for sharing your really inspiring stories. It's been a pleasure to hear the sorts of change that local organizing can create around the world. So with that, thanks everybody for taking part. And I look forward to hearing more from all of you as you get started and get engaged in your local campaigns all around the world. Thanks very much. Have a good day.